So here I am today with Chapter 5 of First Flight, The 100 Dresses Part 1 by El Besor Esther. Now this story is based on racial discrimination. When you don't belong to the mainstream, like as in everyone is sort of Hindus, like all Indians, and some American or someone comes, they become foreign, right? A foreigner. So they are different from everybody. So there is racial discrimination. Yeah. Now this story is about a little girl who has gone through the problems of racial discrimination, but yet we get a very good lesson out of it, a very good message out of it. So let's see in detail what all it has for us. But before that, let's know about the author. El Besor Esther was an American children's author and the children's librarian. Her book, Ginger Pie, won the Newbery Medal. Eleanor based the story, The 100 Dresses, on her real life experience as the girl who received Peggy's hand-me-down dresses. Peggy's hand-me-down dresses, as in Peggy's worn dresses. So whatever Peggy would wear, and then if she would not, like quite often we do that when we are not wearing some certain clothes, and if they are in good condition, then we pass it down to people who need it, maybe the domestic help, that's the servants in our house, their children, and so on. We have that mentality that let somebody wear instead of we throwing the clothes away. Of course, we give it only if they are in good condition. Yeah. So now let's move to the plot, The 100 Dresses Part 1. It is a beautiful story about a small girl, Whywanda, by El Besor Esther. Whywanda used to go to school on foot. She used to walk it down and sit next to the last bench in one corner of her room. She used to go to her classroom, but she used to sit nearly, very close to that last bench right in the corner. All the girls in her class used to make fun of her poverty and funny name. Now, how mean can that be? That poor girl, she didn't have a rich background. She was very poor. So they would make fun of her poverty. Maybe she did not wear good clothes. They were shabby clothes, They were not up to date. Maybe the shoes were torn. Poverty, all about it. And funny name. Now, if we look at, if foreigners look at our names, when they say our names, they find it funny. Likewise, when we have to speak their names, we find it funny. They are not funny, they are different. That's the culture, that's their tradition, that's their way of doing things and saying things. Ours is different. So, there's nothing to really laugh upon anything. It's just that they are different, so are we. Even we are different. Like we, if we eat all different kinds of foods. We even know what is a chapati. We know, we have rice and dal, pulses, whereas their food is entirely different. So we cannot laugh on their food. Why? Because it's different. Likewise, when it comes to dressing sense, it comes to anything and everything, they are different. Everyone's culture is different. You talk of India itself in different states, there are so many differences, right? So that does not mean you make fun, right? If the name might sound funny to you, but then you don't need to really laugh upon it. She never quarreled with anyone. She was always calm. Now, such a sweet character, the poor soul. From these two lines itself, I can make out where she's sitting in one corner of her room, people making fun of her, and yet she never quarreled with anyone. She did not fight back. She was calm. When a drawing competition was held in her school, Whywanda took part in that competition. She made the design of 100 dresses. Imagine the potential, imagine the talent this girl had, and imagine people making fun of her. She made the design of 100 dresses. All the designs were very beautiful. She was selected for the first prize. This surprised everyone very much. They say you should not judge the book by its cover. Just because you feel that she is shabbily dressed, not wearing the latest shoes, has a funny name, has a different accent, she talks in a different accent, that does not mean that she is nothing. She can do nothing. So you never know the potentials, the talent hidden within anyone and everyone until and unless you know that person very well. So how can you just make fun of her? But yes, people did it, and see how they realized it. So today, Monday, Wanda Petrinsky was not in her seat, but nobody, not even Peggy and Madeline, the girls who started all the fun, noticed her absence. It was Monday and Wanda had not come to school today. But unfortunately, nobody even realized it. Nobody even thought, oh, Wanda has not come. Even the girls, Peggy and Madeline, who had actually started making fun of her. You know, they were the ones, they were the main culprits who had started making fun of her. Even they did not realize that she has not come to school. Usually, Wanda sat in the seat next to the last seat in the last row in room 13. Now, that's where the class was. It was room 13, and she sat in the seat next to the last seat in the last row. She sat in the corner of the room where the rough boys who did not make good marks sat. Now, she sat in that corner of the room where all the dumb characters, all the children who never scored good marks, in fact, the rough boys, they call it, they never got good marks, they used to sit there. She sat next to them. The corner of the room where there was most scuffling of feet. What do you mean by scuffling? Noisy, dragging movements of the feet on the ground. You know, they kept making noise with their feet, they're dragging their feet, making the noise. So it was the noisiest part of room 13. That was the room. So that is where she would sit, right? Most roars of laughter when anything funny was said, and most mud and dirt on the floor. That was the most funniest audience. You know, if the teacher said anything wrong, or if the children in the front row, they said anything wrong, these backbenchers, these last benchers would laugh the loudest. And also it was the most muddiest and dirtiest on the floor. Yeah, the floor was the most muddiest and dirtiest. So if you look at it, where she would sit, this is the description of the place she sat in. Yeah, so definitely a 2 marks question. You should read it and you should be well versed with it. Wanda did not sit there because she was rough and noisy. She did not belong to the rough boys group. She was not at all like them. On the contrary, in fact, she was very quiet and rarely said anything at all. She was the most quiet child over there, the most quiet student over there. She hardly spoke anything. And nobody had ever heard her laugh out loud. Just like those backbenchers, those last benchers used to laugh out loud, she never did that. Nobody had heard her also. Sometimes she twisted her mouth into a crooked sort of smile. Crooked as in bent or twisted out of place or contorted. But that was all. You just give it a smile, just a small corner of your mouth moving. That's what she would do if at all she felt anything funny. Yes? So this is how she was. Very quietly she would stay there and, attend the class. Nobody knew exactly why Wanda sat in that seat, unless it was because she came all the way from Boggins Heights and her feet were usually caked with dry mud. Now, they did not know why did she choose to sit with those rough boys. She could have sat in the front. She is a very clever girl, a very quiet girl, a very bright child. She could have come and sat in the front. But she chose to sit there. Why? First of all, nobody understood that why does she sit with those rough boys. Then they realized maybe because she came all the way from Boggins Heights. Now, Boggins Heights over there is like, a slum area. It is an unplanned area. It's not posh with apartments and bungalows, not at all. It is somewhere that belongs to the slum area. See, her feet were usually caked with dry mud. So basically where she lived, it was not a developed area, right? That's why there was mud everywhere. It was not a concrete road. And that's the reason her feet used to always be filled with dry mud. But No one really thought much about Wanda Petrinsky once she sat in the corner of the room. Once she was there, nobody even realized her presence or absence. Even when she was absent, nobody got to know. Even when she was present, nobody thought of anything. Nobody thought of her. Yeah. So that is how it was. She actually belonged to, the Boggins Heights was that area in the city where all the slum dwellers used to stay there, like in India when we call huts and, all the slum areas, this was something similar. It was sort of a backward, undeveloped area. The time when they thought about Wanda was outside of school hours. Now, there was a certain time when they thought about her. When was that? They thought about Wanda was outside of school hours. At noon time, when they were coming back to school, or in the morning early before school began. Now, they would think of her either while going home, right, at noon time, that's after school, or early in the morning before school began. But why? When groups of 2 or 3 or even more would be talking and laughing on their way to the schoolyard. They would be, laughing and talking on their way to the schoolyard. Then sometimes they waited for Wanda to have fun with her. Now that was the time, either when they left for home or when they were coming to school. They would be in groups of 2 or 3 or maybe even more, talking and laughing. That's how we generally do. We go to school with our friends, don't we? Yes. And then they waited for her to come. Why? Because they wanted to have fun with her. They would mock at her. They would make fun of her. The next day, now that was Monday. The next day, Tuesday, Wanda was not in school either. Even the next day, she did not turn up. And nobody noticed her absence again. As usual, even on Monday, nobody realized. Same thing on Tuesday. But on Wednesday, Peggy and Maddie, who sat down front with other children who got good marks and who didn't track in a whole lot of mud, did notice that Wanda wasn't there. Then finally on Wednesday, Peggy and Maddie is the short of Madeline, the same girl. So they both realized they would sit in the front, right? They would sit in the front. Why? Because they even scored good marks. And of course, they didn't track in a whole lot of mud. They did notice that she wasn't there. Peggy was the most popular girl in school. Now, out of these two, Peggy was the most popular. Why? She was pretty. She had many pretty clothes and her hair was curly. So she was the most attractive girl. So everyone knew her very well. She was pretty. She wore pretty clothes. She had curly hair. Maddie was her closest friend. They were very close friends. The reason Peggy and Maddie noticed Wanda's absence was because Wanda had made them late to school. Now, why did they get late to school? Remember, they would make fun of her. They would wait for Wanda to come. And before going to school, before walking in that schoolyard, they would wait for her so that when she comes, they would laugh and make fun of her, and then they would go on. Now that day, on Wednesday, both these girls, both these friends, Peggy and Maddie, waited for Wanda to come. But they got late to school. Why? Because they were waiting for her to come and she didn't turn up. They had waited and waited for Wanda to have some fun with her, but she just hadn't come. Even Wednesday, she did not turn up. They often waited for Wanda Petrinsky to have fun with her. They wanted to, so this is your racial discrimination. She belonged to some other race. So because of that, they made a lot of fun of her. But eventually see what happens. Wanda Petrinsky, most of the children in room 13 didn't have names like that. Now, for them, this name was funny. Everyone had different names. They had names easy to say like Thomas, Smith or Allen. They had very easy names. But hers was sounding a little different, so they made fun of it. There was one boy named Bounce, Willie Bounce, and people thought that was funny. But not funny in the same way that Petrinsky was. They thought, that Willy Bounce is also funny, but not as funny as Petrinsky was. They found that very funny. Wanda didn't have any friends. Now, obviously, with such people around, you think you want friends? She came to school alone and went home alone. She always wore a faded blue dress that didn't hang right. Didn't hang right as in didn't fit her properly. Yeah, maybe it was either too loose, maybe it was too big or something. It did not fit her properly. It was clean, it was washed, it was clean, but it looked as though it had never been ironed properly. Now, it was clean. Your clothes are washed, but if they are not ironed properly, also it doesn't look good. It gives a very shabby look. Especially when you're going to school. We all wear well, washed and ironed clothes, be it wherever we go. She didn't have any friends, but a lot of girls talked to her. Yes, they were not really friendly, but then yes, they did speak to her. They did not leave her isolated. Sometimes they surrounded her in the schoolyard as she stood watching the little girls play hopscotch on the worn, hard ground. Now, they used to surround her. Some of them, they surrounded her in the schoolyard as she would wait. She was not playing. The poor girl, she used to watch the other people playing hopscotch. You remember this game? I'm sure even you have played. Even I, when I was your age, yes, I have also played a lot of it. Hopscotch, we know, game in which children hop into and over squares marked on the ground. This was different. We used to do it in numbers. Yeah, I think even now we use numbers. Whereas they've used alphabets. I guess that's how they do it. So, she used to watch them play hopscotch, and of course she was not a part of it, not really doing it. Wanda, Peggy would say in a most courteous manner, as though she were talking to Miss Mason. Now, Peggy would talk to her that, as though she's talking to a teacher or maybe full of respect. Wanda, she'd say, giving one of her friends a nudge. Tell us. Nudge is like this. When you nudge somebody, that's a nudge. A gentle push. How many dresses did you say you had hanging up in your closet? Says, now they've asked her this question 100 times. But still, again to make fun of her, how many dresses did you say you had hanging up in your closet, in your wardrobe, in your cupboard? How many dresses you had said you have? And she would say 100, Wanda would say. She would reply always. She did not ignore or avoid. She answered 100. 100? Exclaimed all the little girls incredulously. Incredulously as in showing unwillingness to believe. 100? You think that's possible? 100? And imagine how she comes to school. Remember, she comes to school in a blue faded dress. It is clean but not well ironed. Correct? And then she's telling them that yes, I have 100 dresses in my cupboard. And the little ones would stop playing hopscotch and listen. So she was standing there watching those children play while Peggy comes and asks her, okay, Wanda, what did you tell us that day that how many clothes you have, how many, dresses do you have hanging in your closet? And she would say 100. And the children, the girls who were playing hopscotch would, huh? And of course, they wouldn't believe because it was 100, which was not even possible. They would stop playing and they would listen to what these girls were talking. Yeah, 100, all lined up, said Wanda. Then her thin lips drew together in silence. She would say that, and after that, she would just be quiet. She would not utter a word. What are they like? All silk, I bet, said Peggy. Now, she's actually, a lot of sarcasm here. So, she says, what are they all like? All silk, I bet. I'm sure they must be all silk. Yeah, all silk, all colors. And she would also confidently answer, all silk, all colors. Velvet too? So, they are made of velvet. These are the different materials. Yeah, velvet too. 100 dresses. Wanda would repeat stolidly. Stolidly as in not showing any feeling. She would say, yes, they are 100 dresses. They are of silk and they are of velvet. She was showing no feeling. All lined up in my closet. All of them are nicely lined up in my closet. Yes, there are 100 dresses. Then they'd let her go, and then they would not ask her anything, and then they would let her go. And then before she'd gone very far, she's just walked a few steps, they couldn't help bursting into shrieks and peals of laughter. Now they're making fun of her, right? They were It was a mockery. She would hardly walk a little and then they would burst out laughing nice and loud, clear, shrieks and peals of laughter. They would laugh out loud. 100 dresses? Obviously, the only dress Wanda had was the blue one she wore every day. So why did she say she had 100? What a story. Why would she say that every time that she had 100 dresses? Let's see. How many shoes did you say you had? Says how many shoes you had. Now, this was the question. These are the different types of questions. They would keep posing at her again and again, asking her the same questions, though they knew what she would answer. 60 pairs, all lined up in my closet. She said, yes, I have 60 pairs of shoes. Cries of exaggerated politeness greeted this. All alike? Say all the same? 60 pairs, all the same? Oh no, every pair is different. All colors, all lined up. She says, yes, they are different. I mean, what would she do with 60 pairs of the same type? So she said all are different and they're all different colors, all lined up. Peggy, who had thought up this game, and Maddie, her inseparable friend, were always the last to leave. Now here, it was Peggy who had actually started with this nonsense game. Game in the sense, she would keep asking these same questions to her again and again. And with her was Maddie, her inseparable friend. So these both friends were the partners in crime. Yeah? And they were both the last to leave. They would make fun, they would laugh, everybody would leave, and then lastly these two would leave. Finally, Wanda would move up the street, her eyes dull and her mouth closed, hitching her left shoulder every now and then in the funny way she had, finishing the walk to school alone. Now, finally, these girls would leave, they would make fun of her, then they would start walking and she would walk up on the road, she would move up the street. Her eyes were dull. I mean, obviously everyone was making fun of her. So there was no happiness in her eyes. Her eyes were dull, her mouth closed, she was quiet. Remember, she used to come to school and go back home without a friend. She was all alone. Hitching her left shoulder, she would keep doing that in the most funny way she had, finishing the walk to school alone. She would walk it alone. She had no friend. Peggy was not really cruel. You think so? She made fun of her and not just in front of everybody. She would do that. She was not really cruel. She protected small children from bullies. Bullies as in those who use their strength or power to frighten weaker people. So if anyone tried to bully a small person, she would protect those children. And she cried for hours if she saw an animal mistreated. Now, Peggy did not have a heart of stone. She used to feel bad. She used to feel bad when children were made fool of. She used to feel bad if animals were mistreated. If anybody had said to her, don't you think that is a cruel way to treat Wanda? Now, if anyone told her this, she would have been very surprised. Cruel? Why did the girl say she had 100 dresses? Say, how am I cruel? Why is that girl saying, when I am asking her how many dresses, why is she saying 100 dresses? Anybody could tell that that was a lie. Looking at what she wears to school, we can make out that she's speaking a lie. But then why is she speaking that? Why did she want to lie? And she wasn't just an ordinary person. Else, why did she have a name like that? Anyway, they never made her cry. They said she wasn't just an ordinary person. Else, why did she have a name like that? Her name's Wanda Petrinsky. She's no ordinary person. But there was one thing. They made fun of her, but they never made her cry. So that's where it shows that, why and how Peggy was not cruel. As for Maddie, this business of asking Wanda every day how many dresses and how many hats and how many this and that she had was bothering her. Now remember, Maddie was, Peggy's close friend, best friend. But Maddie was actually not liking the idea when they used to ask keep asking these questions. How many hats she had. They used to keep asking Wanda these questions. How many shoes, how many dresses. So when they would keep asking her this every day they would ask, she would feel really sorry about it. Maddie was poor herself. Now, obviously, she could feel that pinch. Why? Because she herself did not, she was not as rich as Peggy maybe, and she was just like Wanda. Even she was poor. She usually wore somebody's hand-me-down clothes. Maddie used to wear clothes, hand-me-down are old clothes handed down by someone else. She herself, Maddie herself, used to wear clothes which were worn by others. Thank goodness she didn't live up on Boggin's Heights or have a funny name. Now, the only difference in Wanda and Maddie was that she would not live on Boggin's Heights. She was not there. And she did not have a funny name. Otherwise, even Maddie would be made fun of. Yeah, just like Wanda, they were making fun of Wanda. Sometimes, when Peggy was asking Wanda those questions in that mocking, polite voice, here false or meant to make fun of, when she would ask her that, Maddie felt embarrassed. She felt ashamed. Maddie used to feel bad. She used to feel ashamed and studied the marbles in the palm of her hand, rolling them around and saying nothing herself. When Peggy used to do that, Maddie would not be a part of it. Maddie would not ask those questions. What she would do, she would have her marbles in her hand, she would keep rolling, counting, she would keep looking, she would do something with that, but she would not speak when Peggy used to do this, when Peggy used to make fun of her, of Wanda. Not that she felt sorry for Wanda exactly. She did feel, but if she would have actually felt sorry, no, she would have stopped her friend Peggy from doing it. She didn't do that. She just let Peggy do it, but she would not participate in that. She would never have paid any attention to Wanda if Peggy hadn't invented the dresses game. Maybe, Madeline wouldn't have even looked at Wanda. But, when Peggy came up with this dresses game, that is the time she realized that Wanda exists. But suppose Peggy and all the others started in on her next. She says, just imagine, now even I'm poor, even I don't have, those many new clothes. Even I wear clothes of somebody else. What if Peggy and all the other girls, just like they are making fun of Wanda, what if they made fun of me? She wasn't as poor as Wanda, perhaps, but she was poor. That's what I said. She wasn't very poor, but she was poor. Of course, she would have more sense than to say she had 100 dresses. She wouldn't be the one like Wanda saying that, yes, I have 100 dresses. Still, she would not like for them to begin on her. She definitely did not want people to make fun of her. No ways. She wished Peggy would stop teasing Wanda Petrinsky. She says, oh, I just hope, Peggy stops doing this nonsense. It's not really a great thing to, make fun of that poor little girl. Today, even though they had been late to school, Maddie was glad she had not had to make fun of Wanda. She says, fine, thank God. Today was that day, though they were not late. Though they had been late to school, she was glad she did not have to make fun of Wanda. She worked her arithmetic problems absent-mindedly. 8 times 8, let's see. She was doing her mathematics. She was doing her arithmetic. She actually was solving those problems in her mind. So, that thing passed off and they did not make fun of Wanda. She wished she had the nerve to write Peggy a note because she knew she never would have the courage to speak right out to Peggy. She says, how I wish. Now, Madeline was thinking that how I wish I had that courage. I had the guts to write to Peggy. I would write a note to Peggy saying, please, let's stop this nonsense. Let's not, trouble Wanda anymore. Let's not embarrass that poor girl anymore. But she did not have the guts to write. She knew she can never speak it out. Speaking was totally no chance at all. It was not a possibility, but she didn't even have the guts to write. to say, hey Peg, let's stop asking Wanda how many dresses she has. When she finished her arithmetic, she did start a note to Peggy. She wanted to write this in her note that, let's stop asking Wanda these questions. Let's just stop it. And so after she finished her arithmetic, she actually started writing a note to Peggy. Suddenly, she paused and shuddered. While she was writing this, she suddenly paused and she trembled. Here typically as a result of fear or revulsion. Suddenly she realized what will be the repercussion, what will be her reaction to my note. She pictured herself in the schoolyard, a new target, a person deliberately chosen for attack. Now then she would become the target. Madeline would become the target for Peggy and the girls. So while she was writing the note, she was just thinking that, okay, imagine I start walking in the schoolyard and now the next I know, Peggy and all the other girls start making fun of me because I have told them not to make fun of Wanda. Peggy might ask her where she got the dress that she had on. Now remember, Maddie used to wear hand-me-down dresses. So if Peggy asked her, whose dress are you wearing? That would be embarrassing. And Maddie would have to say it was one of Peggy's old ones that Maddie's mother had tried to disguise with new trimmings so no one in room 13 would recognize it. Now, Maddie would wear Peggy's clothes, Peggy's old clothes. Peggy was, a well-to-do person. So she would wear clothes and even little bit here and there, then she would just give it off to Maddie because they were very close friends. And of course, I'm sure Peggy knows her condition. So she used to give her clothes to Maddie. And Maddie's mother was very sweet. Not to really embarrass Maddie because she was wearing someone else's clothes. So what she would do is she would try to disguise. She would make a few changes in that dress so that people don't come to know that it is Peggy's old dress. She would add some lace here and there. She would put on some new trimmings so that nobody in room 30 would recognize that dress. That, Peggy used to wear this dress. It is Peggy's old clothes. Maddie is wearing Peggy's dress. So just to avoid all that, she would disguise it with new trimmings like decorations, especially for clothing. A little lace, a little button here and there. That's how her mom would do to help her out. If only Peggy would decide of her own accord as in she does something because she wants to, not because someone has asked the person or forced her to. Now here, she would decide of her own accord. She would do what she wanted to, not because someone told her. To stop having fun with Wanda. Oh well. She says, I just hope Peggy gets it on her own, that I shouldn't do it. She, her conscience, her gut feeling should, tell her that, her conscience should prick her that, you're doing wrong. If that happens, great. But if I tell her, it will be a problem. Maddie ran her hand through her short blonde hair as though to push the uncomfortable thoughts away. Now she was just, remember that she was wondering that she's walking and people are making fun of her. And then Peggy is asking her, oh, whose dress have you worn? And then she would say, oh, it's yours. So, those thoughts were really killing her and she just ran her hand through her short blonde hair. What difference did it make? Slowly, Maddie tore into bits the note she had started. She had started writing that note to Peggy. And thinking of all this, she just tore the note to bits. She was Peggy's best friend. And Peggy was the best liked girl in the whole room. Right in the beginning of the chapter she was beautiful, she used to wear good clothes, she had curly hair. So she was the most attractive girl and everybody loved her. Peggy could not possibly do anything that was really wrong, she thought. She says she wanted to console herself. She's like, why she's not doing it? So she says, maybe, see now she's so famous and she's such a good girl. I'm sure, she is not doing something wrong. Whatever she's doing is okay according to her. As for Wanda, she was just some girl who lived up on Boggan's Heights and stood alone in the schoolyard. Say what? Peggy, everyone knows. She's famous, everyone likes her. But what about Wanda? She was just a girl who lived in the slum area, the Boggins Heights, and she stood alone in the schoolyard. She had no friends. She scarcely said anything to anybody. Scarcely as in almost no, or maybe just rarely ever said anything to anybody. She was a quiet little alone girl. The only time she talked was in the schoolyard about her 100 dresses. So every time Peggy would ask her the question, and all that she spoke was she had 100 dresses. Maddie remembered her telling about one of her dresses, pale blue with colored trimmings. And she remembered another that was brilliant jungle green with a red sash. Now, Maddie just remembered, this one telling, Wanda telling about two dresses in particular. Which were those two dresses? She would say there was one pale blue color with colored trimmings, some lace type on it. And the other she remembered was a brilliant jungle green, just like a Christmas tree, the jungle green, with a red sash over it. She just remembered talking of those two dresses. You'd look like a Christmas tree in that, the girls had said in pretended admiration. So when she had spoken about her two dresses, the girls had told her that, this jungle green dress which you're talking about with a red sash will actually make you look like a Christmas tree. They pretended as in they were not really admiring her, but they were making fun. It was actually sarcasm. Thinking about Wanda and her 100 dresses all lined up in the closet, Maddie began to wonder who was going to win the drawing and coloring contest. Now, there was a drawing competition that had been declared in school. So while these thoughts were going on in Maddie's head, suddenly the thought comes that, she was thinking of all those 100 dresses. Wanda had said they're all different colors. While she was thinking that, suddenly she began to wonder, she began to think who was going to win the drawing and coloring contest. For girls, there were two themes for different, for the boys and the girls. For the girls, this contest consisted of designing dresses, and for the boys of designing motorboats. Now, the girls had to design dresses, that was the theme for the drawing competition, and the boys had to design motorboats. Probably Peggy would win the girls' medal. Now, Peggy was a very clever person. So, she thought, obviously, as always, Peggy will win the girls' medal. Peggy drew better than anyone else in the room. She was very good at drawing. At least, that's what everybody thought. So far, that's what everybody thought. She could copy a picture in a magazine or some film star's head so that you could almost tell who it was. Now, she used to copy drawings. She used to copy them, she used to copy a picture from the magazine, or she would even make a film star's head, the face, and you could actually make out who that film star was. So beautifully, so well, and so accurately she drew. Oh, Maddie was sure Peggy would win. She says, oh, her drawing is excellent. I'm sure she will win. Well, tomorrow the teacher was going to announce the winners. Then they'd know. Now, the next day, tomorrow was the day when the winners were going to be declared. The teacher was going to declare the winners, and then they'd come to know. The next day, it was drizzling. Drizzling as in it was a very light rain. It was a very light shower. Maddie and Peggy hurried to school under Peggy's umbrella. Now, they were rushing to school because it was raining. Also, naturally, on a day like this, they didn't wait for Wanda Petrinsky on the corner of Oliver Street, the street that far, far away under the railroad tracks and up the hill led to Boggins Heights. Now, this is the street they are talking about, Boggins Heights, which took them to Boggins Heights. So, they did not wait there for her. Anyway, they weren't taking chances on being late today. And why so? Because today was important. Can you tell me why was it important? You remember the results of the drawing competition were going to be declared. So yes, they wanted to rush to the class to find out who had won it. "Do you think Miss Mason will announce the winners today?" asked Peggy. "Oh, I hope so, the minute we get in," said Maddie. "Of course you will win, Peg." She said, "Come on, it's an understood thing. You'll only win." "Hope so," said Peggy, eagerly. She said, "I just hope so." The minute they entered the classroom, they stopped short and gasped, as in, the moment they entered. There were drawings all over the room, on every ledge and windowsill, dazzling colors and brilliant, lavish designs, very grand, very rich designs, all drawn on great sheets of wrapping paper. Now, they were expecting, when they go to class, they would see ma'am there, the children, and she would announce the winner. "Oh, Peggy, you're the winner," blah, blah. But they were in for a big surprise. And what was that? The moment they entered, they were shocked. Why? Because there were drawings all over the room. There were drawings on, different wrapping papers. There were rich designs. There were beautiful colors. And they were there on every ledge, on every shelf, on every windowsill. There were so many beautifully, dazzling colors. All of them, the designs were lined up. There must have been 100 of them all lined up. 100 of them. Just keep this in mind. There must be the drawings for the contest. They said, now these must be the drawings for the contest. They were. Everybody stopped and whistled or murmured admiringly. Everyone who saw those drawings, those beautiful, remarkable, commendable drawings, whoever saw them, they stopped and they whistled like, wow, and they murmured admiringly. They were whispering and they were praising those drawings. They loved it so much. As soon as the class had assembled, as soon as everyone came, Miss Mason announced the winners. Jack Begle had won for the boys, she said, and his design for an outboard motor was an exhibition in room 12 along with the sketches by all the other boys. So first she declared the winner of the boys who was supposed to design motorboats, and his design had been put up in room 12 in the exhibition there. That was Jack Begle. As for the girls, she said, although just 1 or 2 sketches were submitted by most, one girl and room 13 should be proud of her. This one girl actually drew 100 designs, all different and all beautiful. Now she comes to the girls. What does she say? As for the girls, although just 1 or 2 sketches were submitted by most, everybody did 1 or 2 sketches. One girl in room number 13 and room 13 should be proud of her. Why? She actually drew 100 designs, all different. They were all different from the other. They were not same and they were all beautiful. In the opinion of the judges, any one of the drawings is worthy of winning the prize. She made 100. She drew 100, but each drawing is worth winning a prize. Each one of them. So all 100 are definitely there to win. I am very happy to say that Whywanda Petrinsky is the winner of the girls' medal. She has won the medal, Whywanda Petrinsky. Unfortunately, Whywanda has been absent from school for some days and is not here to receive the applause that is due to her. It's a very unfortunate thing that she is not here at the moment when everyone could have really clapped out loud for her. Let us hope she will be back tomorrow. Now class, you may file around the room, you may go around the room quietly and look at her exquisite drawings. Look at her extremely beautiful and well-made drawings. The children burst into applause. They suddenly and spontaneously clapped their hands. They all clapped really loud, and even the boys were glad to have a chance to stamp on the floor, put their fingers in their mouths and whistle, though they were not interested in dresses. These were the same boys who used to sit and, laugh and, tap their feet and make all the noise in the last bench. And they were the same ones who actually got a chance to, tap their feet and whistle, with the fingers in their mouth, though they were not really interested in the dresses. "Look, Peg," whispered Maddie. "There's that blue one she told us about. Isn't it beautiful?" Now remember, she had spoken about one blue dress and the jungle green dress where people told her you look like a Christmas tree. She said, "Yes," said Peggy, "and here's that green one. Boy, and I thought I could draw." Remember she had spoken about those two dresses, those blue and green dresses, and they noticed it. Both of them, Maddie and Peggy, they saw those two dresses, and when Peggy saw it, she's like, "Oh my God, I thought I could really draw well, but she's done such an amazing job." I mean, it's way, way impressive. And this is where we come to the end of part 1 of your story. There is a good twist coming up in part 2. Please stay glued. But before that, remember, there is something that you need to know. Wait long enough and people will surprise and impress you. Very well said by Randy Posh. This is just wait. Don't draw, don't jump into conclusions. Don't just look at the person and draw conclusions. Don't. You wait some time, understand them, know them, and definitely they will surprise you and impress you, just like Wanda Petrinsky surprised the entire school. Yes, so of course, lot more surprises, lot more fun. Keep watching and keep learning.